Yes. Hello and welcome to the 45th episode, we think, of PEMpodcast, the Psychic Guy Mystery Podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Laurie, here with my fabulous sister, Sandy, and a whole room full of party goers. These are our wonderful fans who have year after year, hopefully year after year, episode after episode, commented. They have encouraged all of you to join and watch. And we just really appreciate you fans so much. So we thought we'd hand select a few to kind of join us and we could talk about, we could recap the year. So this was totally Sandy's idea. I love it. Thank you for suggesting it, Sands. My sister is so fucking brilliant. She makes me look good just by association. It's all great. So here we have Tracy. So when I call your name, please wave at the audience. We have Tracy, Amanda, Leah.
Leah.
Hi. Leia, like the princess. And Bonnie and Mary. Awesome sauce. Some of you have suggested cases. Others of you have just been a fountain of optimism. And a few of you, most of you, have been fucking hilarious. So we appreciate the added humor bonus in the comments. We read all of the comments and we super duper appreciate you guys. So I'm going to hand it over to Sandy. Sandy's going to kind of take the lead. We're going to kind of ask you guys about the cases that we've covered this year. So Sands, take it away.
Okay, so the first question we'd like to explore about this past year is which Psychic Guy mystery stood out for you the most and why? So how about we start with Bonnie?
I'm not even sure if it's this year. I'm so sorry. But the Asha degree missing young girl, that was just really kind of wound me up and made me, I think I watched it twice.
Oh, did you?
It was moving.
Yeah,
so
that was the one that I literally cried before, during, and after. I couldn't. What they did to that poor little girl.
And you didn't even go in.
Yeah, Sandy and I. So Ashley Degree was a young 8-year-old who mysteriously went walking in the middle of the night away from her phone, or excuse me, away from her home, and disappeared in the night. And my intuition had led me to believe that she was kidnapped and unspeakable things were done to her, and she is gone from this earth. But she was, her parents adored her. They still keep vigil, hoping that she will come back. And she was bright, beautiful, sunshiny, adorable little girl who didn't deserve anything that happened to her. So that was a tough one. That was a tough one for me, Mary. That's interesting. So
how about you, Tracy? What PEMpodcast mystery stood out for you the most and why?
Kyron Horman. I live in the Pacific Northwest, and every year there's a remembrance and a hope that we find this poor little boy, and the PEM podcast for him. We all feel that he's passed, but it's still just heart-wrenching when it was in our backyard. I'm in a different place where I was living before, but I was very close to the area where he disappeared, and it's just anything to do with kids is going to devastate me.
Yeah, I would agree. I have a very difficult time with a lot of the cases covering children, which is we tend to shy away from some of them in particular. So yeah, Kyron for me, big time. I've been carrying him in my heart since I first heard of the story of his disappearance. So I was actually really thrilled that we were able to tap into Victoria's intuition and have a sense of what happened and why it happened to him.
Isn't it? And that's the thing too, is like when we are kind of able to sort of tap into the why, it's still unfathomable. It's just still so jarring, even when you know the reason. It's like it doesn't compute, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
For that to
be. How about you, Amanda? Did you have a mystery that stood out for you?
I liked the cruise ship ones, which only made me realize I don't ever want to go on a cruise ship. But the one about the girl that got put in, you thought she had been put into a refrigerator and then moved off ship in a
Amy Lynn
container.
Bradley. Yeah.
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 I found that to be really interesting. Personally, though, the one you did last week was my favorite because I suggested it.
There you go.
And I've been wanting to know, and I told someone about it today. I'm like, this is what happened to her. And she said, it makes sense. So
Really? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a wild
yeah,
premise
I was up in Georgetown yesterday and I'm like, that case? And she goes, Rachel Lee Cook. And I'm like, yeah, that case. And she goes, this is what they think happened to her. And she goes, it could totally happen.
Yeah.
Wow. How
Yes,
about
it
you,
can.
Leah? How about you, Leah? Is there a mystery that stood out for you the most?
She's on there.
Yeah. I don't really remember them from week to week, but sometimes you guys will be talking, and like with the last one, something that you say will be just like what happened to me during the day. Like, okay, so I know you're raising your eyebrows. So I was reading Kelly Ripa's book, and she was talking about Jimmy Buffett, which made me think about St. George Island, where I lived when I was a little girl, which made me think about wild boar, that they sometimes the bikers would kill a wild boar on the beach or on the island, and then have a bonfire and have roast pig. So there I was with wild boar on my brain, and then you mentioned wild boar. So I was like, oh, that's synchronicity again.
Coinky dinky? I think not. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my thing. I will get something that happens to me during the day that's on my mind, and you guys will mention it.
That's
Interesting.
crazy.
How about you,
Crazy.
Mary?
It's not crazy. It's like totally
I'm not
normal.
crazy.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're good.
How about you, Mary? Is there a mystery that stood out to you?
It's really interesting. I have two of them written down, and it's Asha and Amy Lynn Bradley. So it was the cruise ship and the little girl. And in the one email, it said something about, was there any of them where you got a psychic twinge or a twinge? And when you were reading the one about the little girl, when you said that the guy radioed, it hit me right away that that's how somebody found her. That it was his call out on the radio trying to be helpful that alerted someone else to where she was.
Yeah. Really sad. Yeah.
And it's surprising, Mary, that you didn't say the Bricka family murders, which really Mary suggested them, and they have just left an indelible mark in my brain.
I would agree.
Because Sandy had asked me, she said, which ones did you see the most clearly? And I have just a handful where it was like played out like a movie in my brain. And Brickas were just like, I can see the killer behind that screen door waiting to be let in, just standing there, knock, knock, knock. And they let him in. And that was it.
And, there was a whole book written about that, which I had read, which is what made me send it to you. And, the whole layout is that back door was, open. The neighbors could see that it was open. So the screen door was closed, but the inside door was open. Mm-hmm. And you see him coming to that back door, which is how they kind of thought he came anyway. So,
yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, Bonnie, how about a mystery that surprised you the most?
Oh, the one, I think the one that just happened where it was the boar or maybe a cat. And I figured my intuition said, well, if they saw her cooling down, it must have been a neighbor. She must have gone to help a neighbor and bam, something happened. So I was really happy to hear that it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it was quick. I really don't think I don't think I truly think it was a mountain lion that got her, and then it was very fast. So kind of like, you've got a 150-pound animal on your shoulders. You're a little thing, takes you down, and they know where to strike to end suffering pretty quickly. So that is my gut feeling.
How about you, Tracy? A mystery that surprised you the most?
I was hoping to be a little bit more prepared, but I ended up working late. But that couple that were found murdered and tied to their pool.
Oh yeah, it's the
Murdaws.
no,
No?
it was the
Barry-
Shermans. The
Barry-
Shermans.
Oh, Schumann's. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Barry and Honey Sherman in Toronto. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And the thing is that with the thing that struck me is the construction and how poorly the construction, and where was all that money coming from? Of course, they're going to sue them, and money laundering or whatever the mob are in, they're going to cut corners and do stuff like that. And right after the podcast, we had a local story near us, and they had a question out is, what do you think happened? And I really thought about what Victoria said, and I was just contemplating, and I said, it sounds like a mob hit. And I was surprised at how many people jumped and said they agreed, that they felt it was mob related.
Wow. Interesting.
Being in the Pacific Northwest,
I don't think about the ether is ubiquitous, man. We've all got feelers. We all have a sense.
I actually don't. I'm so literal and I'm so buried into the facts of the story that, I'm like, I have no idea.
Never knew that about you.
I do not like you right now. Okay. So Amanda, is there a mystery result that surprised you?
I don't remember any of them surprising me. I think I listened to them in a different way, more as information than, oh my God, that really happened.
Yeah.
It's more of a, like when she did Rachel Lee, it was more of like a relief that I knew what happened.
A little bit of closure on some of those mysteries. Yeah. How about you, Mary? Any mystery that surprised you as a result?
Actually, the Marilyn Monroe one. The answer that you got for her, that the cover up was the FBI trying to get listening devices out of the house, and that she really did commit suicide. I was surprised at that one.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I kind of was too, because I'd always felt that there was another explanation, and it kind of is. Like, they whitewashed that whole thing, and they painted her as, of course they did, right? She was kind of the victim of her own sabotage, so to speak. And those two men, Bobby and John, they drove her to it. Assholes. Sorry.
So for me, actually, Brian Schaefer, the medical student who was studying in Ohio, I could never have predicted that. Again, I'm very literal, so I'm doing the research, and everything I read talked about the fact that there were security cameras all over the place. And yet when Victoria started to decipher and intuit what actually happened, it made tremendous sense why he didn't get picked up on cameras, and that he ended up in the river and, never to be found again, which is very tragic, because the only one left standing is his brother. His father was killed in a hurricane. His mother died of cancer, and then he tragically was swept out to sea. So any that surprised you, Leah?
Okay, this last one, I was sure Victoria was going to say, okay, this is who killed her, and this is how it was done. And then she said, I don't think it was murder. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I
agree.
It really took me aback that you didn't think it was murder. How could you not think it was murder? Isn't that what this show's about?
No, it's about unsolved mysteries. But yes, I agree with
Sometimes.
you. Yeah. So I know that I asked initially what mystery stood out to you. A slightly different question is there a mystery that bothered you a lot? Like I know that some of the ones you've already discussed definitely bothered you, but are there any others worth mentioning that bothered you a lot? How about you, Bonnie?
There were several, but the ones in Hawaii really bothered me, for a man to say he's going to help someone and murder her. Like, and my dad's a mechanic and I help in his shop. And I just think my dad would totally stop and help someone, but he would,
Yeah.
So upsetting to me. Like, okay, if you're gonna do something horrible to someone, fine, but don't act like you're not doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Any for you, Mary?
I just think that, I'll never go on a cruise now.
We're going to get sued by the cruise lines.
It was really, thinking about this, when I was in my 20s, I was supposed to be going on a cruise with a girlfriend, and something happened and we had to cancel and we didn't go. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that was a good thing.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How about you, Amanda? Was there a case that ended up bothering you a lot?
I can't think of one
Okay.
offhand.
No, you can just jump
Sorry.
in.
I didn't prepare.
No. Tracy, any ideas on any case that kind of hung with you and bothered you?
Yeah, the cruise ones also bothered me. I've often had nightmares about tsunamis or drowning.
Ooh, yeah.
Cruises has never been one of my, I've got to try. It's never going to happen.
Me either.
No.
Yeah.
I just feel like, some people are afraid of lightning. My son-in-law was struck by lightning and lived, he was
Wow.
And I just thought to myself, I've always thought this to myself, that if I ever go on a cruise, I'm the one that's going to get struck by falling overboard or I'm not grateful. So
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen to you in any situation.
Yeah, Tracy's
So.
not going to be at the front of the ship going, I'm queen of the world.
V, did you have a mystery that really bothered you? I know that we talked about Aisha, but
Aisha really stood out. Like the Springfield 3, that really bothered me. Like, it really bothered me. It was just so evil.
yeah,
Just this mom was just doing her best. She finally bought this tiny little house. She probably thought, okay, I've got a foothold in the world. And, girls just graduate. They've got their whole futures ahead of them. They're beautiful girls. And, man and a woman, tag team, lured them outside and murdered them, unfortunately. Yep. So that was a really tough one for me. I think also, if I have to be honest, The Watcher really bothers me.
really?
Yeah, it really bothers me because of the injustice of it.
It's just creepy.
Yeah, well, it is super creepy, but these poor people lost like all of their savings. They lost, they were probably in debt up to their assholes. And it was so cruel. It was just so, you could tell that whoever was writing the letters just really enjoyed the torture, of this couple who they did nothing wrong. They did nothing wrong. They were completely innocent. And to do that sort of mental torture, not just to like an innocent family, but to an entire town. I mean, you're a sick fucker. Sorry, but you're just, you're a sick piece of shit.
Well, I think the part that really aggravated me about that particular case was the way in which the town turned against the family, and the wife had grown up there. Like that was her hometown. Yeah. So for me, that was the greater injustice, was that the town decided that it was casting a negative and that they were to blame for it, when in reality, they were the victims over and over and over again.
Exactly. They had nobody on their side.
Yeah.
When everybody should have been on their side.
Yeah.
You just were like, as you were reading the case, Sandy, I just kept feeling like there's got to be a voice of reason that eventually says something. And everyone just kept hyping the paranoia up. The poor mother.
Yeah. Well, and then I think a lot of people think that they made out with respect to their deal with Netflix. And in reality, I think they only earned $100,000 off of their story, and Netflix has kind of taken it in a completely different direction than what was reality. But
Right.
I couldn't even watch Netflix after listening to Victoria. I was like, no, I have no desire to watch that.
I was the same way.
Yeah. That's funny. For me, there are a couple of cases that really, really bothered me. The yogurt shop murders, after I researched that and presented it, and I chose to not present some of the very graphic details that are associated with that case. But for 4 young high school students to be murdered and assaulted the way that they were just really rattled me. And I had to take a break from children and murder, which is why we went after them.
We did that one in Asia fairly close together. If I remember, like it was a little bit of a 1-2 punch, wasn't it?
No, but
no, okay.
Yeah, but no. So and then the other one that really, 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 really bothered me was Karina Holmer. She was the Swedish au pair that disappeared in Boston, and then half her torso shows up 2 days later. And the graphic details of what happened to her, which have never been revealed and probably are not known unless you are intuitive, really highly disturbing. And then the other one that really rattled me was the Walker family. That was the family in Sarasota, Florida, that were killed by an admirer of the wife. So,
yeah, that was back in the 50s, right? Back in the 50s. And that was the one where the little boy was like 3 and he had been shot.
5. He was 5.
And he'd been trying to crawl to his father and then was shot again. And then the son of a bitch took the baby and drowned the baby. Shot and drowned the baby. Like, the things that these people do to children, what part of your brain exits and allows you to cross that kind of a line? Like I've enjoyed the past year doing this with my sister. I love her. I love visiting her every week. But some of these cases, like, just really kind of make me look at humanity a little differently. There's some lines here that they're just freaking awful. And it's compounded by the fact that I have to touch that energy.
Yeah.
So not only do I kind of get a play-by-play, but like the energy is just disgusting. It's just awful. So especially with Aisha, like I had to go because there was no evidence of what had happened to her, nothing. So I had to do a kind of an intuitive deep dive. I couldn't kind of skirt the edges. I had to go in, and that was a tough one to come back from.
I agree. I think the one thing that gave me a little bit of solace over the Walkers was that you said that the children and the couple had already reincarnated, which I guess gave me some comfort that they get to do a do-over and hopefully in a better way than where they were.
Yeah,
so,
I always look for that when the other side says, "Oh, they've reincarnated," they do a loopy. They do like this.
Yeah.
So I always look for that, and they definitely made sure that I knew that they did come back through. So that was good.
Did anyone do any additional research or continue to pursue a mystery after one of our shows? Is there a case that caused you to want to dig deeper into it?
Tracy?
Tracy, yeah. What?
It was the Chiron Horman, and you touched on an area that I actually am somewhat familiar with, and I made my husband drive us down in Germantown, in the area that you thought he was in. And you realize that we live in the Pacific Northwest, and overgrowth and vegetation and trees grow so fast. And if it's not an area where our county or whatever doesn't maintain a whole lot, it just gets run over. And it just made me so sad to think that he may never be found. I mean, literally seeing the heavy vegetation, the heavy weeds, the bushes, the trees, it's very densely packed. But we do know that there are they're not necessarily wells, but they're kind of like wells, but they're these whole things for I don't know what they were for. The city of Portland's gone through many transformations, and areas that were once being developed would suddenly stop and make a different direction. So you'd have infrastructure that was just being left open, just left.
Really?
And so I could see that very, very well, that
Mhm.
this woman took advantage. And again, that's that soul suppressing thing. Why would you ever do anything to an innocent child? Why?
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And
I-
I think everybody suspects that she's probably the reason that he's not with us anymore. And it's really disappointing that a lot of these players that have caused this harm and done this damage continue to go on and
Right.
live their merry lives.
Right. Like the Moscow murderer.
Yeah.
That he's gonna get caught. I really do think he's gonna get caught. I really do. Someone
think-
knows.
Do you
Someone
think it's
suspects.
soon, or do you think it's
Yeah,
going to drag out?
it wouldn't surprise me if by the spring, that he's brought in and he will be, wasn't me.
I'm holding on to
Okay.
that, Victoria.
I'm sorry?
I'm holding on to that
Yeah.
because they're saying on the news that the police are begging the public for,
Anything.
anything
Hmm.
that they can use.
Yeah.
And
And that's how I think
I'm
it's gonna
just-
happen, Leah.
I'm just saying, no, Victoria, she saw it happening. They're going to catch them. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to worry. I'm
Mhm.
not going to
I
worry.
did, Sandy had asked me, I can't remember if it was on camera or off camera, but you had said he's going to do this again.
Yeah.
And I really don't feel he will. I feel that whatever bloodlust he had was more than satiated, and it caused a much bigger mess than he was anticipating.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel the way he thought it was going to feel.
Yeah.
And now he's just kind of running scared, which I hope he's terrified. I hope he doesn't sleep.
Yeah.
And I really feel one of his relatives, one of his friends knows and is like, do I say something? Do I not say something? Kind of.
They better say something.
Yeah. I think that's how he's going to get caught. I think
Hmm.
someone's going to be like, he confessed this to me or something. And I do think there's trace evidence if they can just find him.
Yeah.
I think they'll
Well,
be able
that's
to
good that there's trace evidence.
circumstantial kind
Yeah.
of put it together. Because I don't think he got rid of the knife. I think he still has that knife.
So
Do
Mary,
you-
sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Do you worry about talking about this stuff that maybe the killer would see it and then he'd go, well, I'm chucking that knife in the river? I always wonder about that with police talking about evidence they have. And then the guy goes, well, if they're looking for me with this, I'm going to take my tattoo off or whatever.
Mhm.
Yes, I worry all the time. You're gonna drive by my house.
That is nothing new though, folks. That is
Yeah.
absolutely nothing new. As long as I have known Sandy, she has been a warrior. So, and that has been tomorrow, 56 years. So
Happy birthday.
thank you. Thank you. Do I think anybody's going to come after us, or do I think anybody's going to
No.
listen to
Like
our
the-
podcast and do
Yeah.
something like that?
Listen to the podcast and then go, well, heck, if they're going to find me from trace evidence, I'm going to get rid of that knife.
If I can be super selfish, I would say, God, wouldn't that be wonderful to be
No.
that popular that some serial killer that we talk about out there is like, oh, I heard it on the PEM podcast. Now I must erase my tattoo.
Or
Yeah,
the
but maybe his
podcasters.
girlfriend is listening to it. Now she goes, oh my gosh, now there's the knife. So
Yeah.
it could happen that way.
But you see, that kind of individual is so arrogant that it's almost like a dare, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like a dare. He's not giving up that knife. That knife is special to him. And it's
Sounds
not
like-
because he used it to murder them. That knife was special to him.
Yeah.
So, Mary, I blame you for causing me to go down a rat hole with respect to the Bricka family. It was such a fascinating case. And I tried to get into the Facebook group that's dedicated to denied, not allowed in. So
He's
I'm,
put it on hold anyway because he says it was hacked. So
oh, is that why? Okay, great. Well, that explains a lot. It's not me. But I found that to be such a fascinating case. So many layers. The idea that perhaps, I cannot think of his name, the serial killer.
Poti, well, they thought it was a Cincinnati Strangler.
Yes, at one point, but there was also the guy out in the West Coast. There was the airline connection. Anyway,
Yeah. Was it Shepherd? No.
no, it was this. So her two, when she was a flight attendant, her two roommates were
Right.
murdered. One was assaulted, one was murdered. So it was just, it was a fascinating case and a lot of layers. And I would love it if they would ultimately solve that case. I think that'd be, pretty satisfying.
That whole fan site would hope that too.
Yeah.
And the author has, he's donating all of the proceeds of the sales of the book to have the DNA evidence retested.
Interesting.
Whether or not it'll do any good because, Victoria thinks that the guy who did it is long gone. It would have to be one of those forensic.
Familial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Familiar match. That is one that I kind of went back and did some more research on after Victoria's insights into it, because she said it was a connection to Jerry and his work. And it was like, yeah, there was somebody that they talked about. And so I went back and found that part in the book. And there was a guy who was acting very strange, showed up the night that all of the police and everybody were there when they found the bodies, and was saying, oh, whose house is this? And he acted like he didn't know, but he had actually carpooled with Jerry. So he knew where Jerry lived.
Interesting.
So, and he had been a suspect, but they,
Couldn't prove
Didn't
it.
have anything.
Yeah.
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 I know they wanted to pin that on the vet, that she was having an affair and blah blah blah. And like, for me, it's almost always the simplest, straightest line, right? So
Yeah.
you start throwing in this vet who's older than her by like 40 years, first of all, right? She's a very young 20 something woman, is not going to go for some pot-bellied vet, okay, married, right? It's just
Right.
no.
Well, and it was right after Miranda, and he lawyered up, which
He
was,
did.
I think, what made people suspect him more than
Yeah.
anything. But then there's all sorts of speculation that he was involved in something else illegal, that he didn't want that to come out. So that was more maybe why he lawyered up.
Right. It just
then he
started to
committed
feel to me
suicide.
that once you started throwing in this vet, that there were so many pieces that they were trying to jam in to fit that didn't fit.
Mhm.
And why would this guy who lives in town jeopardize his marriage, his practice, his livelihood, all of it, right? To murder people, out of a jealous rage? That's ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. You're not going to murder a 4-year-old over a jealous rage. That's not going to happen. But if you're a coworker of Jerry's and he's got the goods on you and he's telling you that he's going to turn you in, that's your livelihood, that's your reputation, that's everything else. You're going to do everything you can to shut him up. So
Mhm.
Is there a mystery that was a favorite of yours, Leah?
So pretty much whenever Victoria is talking, that's my favorite.
okay, like
but
I
no,
need to acknowledge that I don't have any secret deal to pay any of our panelists.
No, I just love you so
Doesn't
much,
mean-
Victoria. And I just think you're wonderful.
Oh,
And you really could just talk about anything.
you're so
And
sweet.
I would
Honey,
tune in to
honey,
watch.
thank you.
Now, the fact that you're talking about criminals, murderers, that gives me pause. It freaks me out. It's pretty upsetting. but you know, it's you, and I love you.
Come for Victoria, stay for the murder.
No, but I think
I'll cuddle
it's
you
very
to death.
interesting. I think it's very interesting. I'm really I love supernatural things. I love ghosties and spirits and all that kinds of stuff. And I just you know, I'm a big fan of yours.
Well,
Excellent.
sweetheart, I'm now a big fan of yours. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Doll, thank you. That's so sweet. That's so sweet.
Tracy, do you have a favorite mystery that we've covered?
You know, I've loved every episode that has come out. I've had readings with Victoria for years. And the one thing that I get out of each and every PEM podcast is that almost always at night, I start dreaming. And I dream about the case that gets put forward. Sometimes I wake up panting, and I'm so glad my husband and I have separate bedrooms because we have different shifts. And then I'm not trying to kick the shit out of it. And other times it's really thoughtful. It's like this downward spiral that it has to finish until the end. And it's not always comfortable, you know, but it makes me have food for thought, you know, makes me think when I watch the news or I hear something on the internet, you know, how much deeper can it go? And I think a lot of people in the news and any kind of media only scratch the surface that makes media hype, but they don't really put any substance to it. And I
Right.
believe
It's so
Victoria
true.
really fleshes that out.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amanda, do you have a favorite mystery?
I don't have a favorite, but I can say that the ones in the beginning were just interesting. But then when you got into the more recent stuff, it really pulled me in. You know, when you did, I can't remember the name of the killer, the famous one over in London with the
Jack the Ripper. Oh, yeah.
there you go.
The
That one was
Servant Girl
interesting.
Annihilator.
The Jack the Ripper, because here in Austin, you might know this, here in Austin, they believe that whoever did that came here and started killing women, and then it stopped here, and they believe he left and went back to London. So other than that, the older ones were kind of, and I'm thinking it's because you guys were just getting started, but
Yeah.
I think they got better as it went on.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, once Sandy took over, really is when it got better. I mean, let's be honest.
Bonnie, did you have a favorite episode?
I love the Dr. Shepherd one because my
Yeah.
grandmother was fascinated by that story.
Mhm.
Dr. Shepherd was wrongly convicted, right? That's
Yes.
yeah. His wife
the murder.
was I
Was
thought it was
the window guys that did it.
window guys. Yeah, the one the part of that fascinated me was there were actually two culprits, not one.
Mhm.
Which I would not have necessarily thought through.
It just makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mary, do you have a favorite?
Well, it's the Bricka.
Yeah.
But, you know, I actually found the very first one very fascinating, the Servant Girl Annihilator, and how you fleshed that out, that it was a blacksmith and the tool and all of that. I found that very interesting. I actually went back and rewatched it recently. And I will say that the microphones that you have now and the headphones have really improved it.
Yeah. Yeah. It took us a minute. The train, the bird, the dog, zzz, kids coming in and out. We're so
Yeah,
professional.
it's all been good.
Where's the food? Yeah.
For me, I in terms of historical cases, I the one about Dorothy Arnold, I thought was fascinating. So that was the New York heiress that disappeared in 1910. And the fact that over 110 years have passed and we still don't know what happened to her. And I was really kind of excited that Victoria had an inkling of what happened to her. I also thought it was really amazing that you were able to sort of put yourself into her position as she was looking up at the sky.
There've
Right before she
been
passed.
a couple of cases where, like, I get so sucked in that like it is literally like a memory. It feels like a memory. Like I'm looking up at, and with her, I remember looking up and seeing the clouds moving across the moon and feeling cold, like really, really cold. And knowing that this was not going to turn out well, kind of thing.
Right.
know?
And then two other historical ones that I thought were amazing was definitely George Reeves, Superman. So many
That was
layers
my
to that.
favorite.
Yeah.
That was my favorite.
And then Dorothy Forstein, who was the Philadelphia housewife that was kidnapped out of her home. And, you know, we knew what happened to her because her children witnessed it, but we didn't know why. And so the ability on your part to sort of intuit why that happened, I thought was really interesting. But I will say my favorite mystery was the mystery around Alcatraz. I just found that story so freaking funny. And the fact that they made it, like you confirmed that they actually escaped and
They
made it.
definitely made it. They absolutely made it. Yeah.
And that there may be a truth revealing happening in 2030. Yeah. I thought that was a really cool case. And I'm kind of sad that we didn't get a lot more views or fans around that one. Because I
Probably
personally
because there's so many theories, do you know, like,
yeah, but yours is
everybody's
the
got a
right
theory
one.
about
That's
like what happened and how it happened. But Cindy, what I loved was you really brought that alive because you talked about the amazingly innovative ways that they came up with building this raft and rope and
the
disguises,
paper mache.
dummies.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And I guess if you have nothing but time and you've got a genius like you, I guess you're gonna like make a game of it
A little bit. Yeah. And what a miserable place to be imprisoned is Alcatraz. I don't know if anybody has toured the prison itself or been to San Francisco for that matter, but I can't imagine a worse condition to be imprisoned in. So I'd be very incented to want to escape if I could. But I just thought it was really clever what they pulled off. So looking forward to that Netflix show. And then the final question tonight is there a mystery? I mean, I know we hope they all get solved, but is there a mystery in particular that you would like to see solved?
Other ones that we've done that have been unsolved.
Yeah. Mary, is there a mystery that you?
Well, it's the one with the college students that,
The Moscow
Moscow,
murders.
Idaho. Yeah.
I'd definitely like to see that solved.
Yeah, me too.
How about you, Tracy? Is there a mystery that you'd like to see solved?
Yes, I would. There's two actually. One is I was just watching the news, a story about Native American women and girls disappearing on several different areas across the United States, and they're just gone. And the other is the Winchester Mystery House. The woman who her father or husband created the Winchester rifle.
Husband.
What?
Her husband.
Yes. And did she did she really experience the supernatural that was going through her house where she's had to keep building? It reminds me of that story Rose Red. And it's always fascinated me.
I know
But
she
the
was
biggest
cuckoo for
is
Cocoa Puffs.
a lot of Native women across the country that are just disappearing.
I would love to do a story on that. I think unfortunately there just isn't a lot of information publicly that I know where to tap into for it. So if someone has a line on information that I can research and then develop a story around, I'd be thrilled to do something around that. So
There's a new TV show called Alaska Daily that's kind of pointing at that same subject matter as well.
I'll watch that. I love that show.
Yeah. As for Winchester Mystery House, I've done the tour 6 times, so I can tell you a lot if you want to write me.
Resources. We have
Never
the
been.
resources.
I wanted to go since I was a kid. So when I lived in San Jose, anytime somebody came, I took them out there.
so cool. All right.
That's amazing.
So Bonnie, do you have a mystery that we've covered that you'd like to see solved?
No, but I remember hearing Grandpa Carl say, "You're a rotter." To I would like to know what a rotter
to Al
is.
Capone.
What a rotter is?
Tell that story. Yeah, what's a rotter?
Yeah, so
but,
do
you
we.
know,
We
a
love
bad
it.
person, you know.
We love
Yeah.
it because my grandfather was just this incredible, like really incredible guy. Did I tell the story that he literally walked from Georgia to Chicago because someone said there are jobs in, Oklahoma to Chicago because somebody said there are jobs in Chicago. And my grandfather said, having come from Plymouth, England, and getting on the wrong bus or the wrong boat to go to Australia 3 times, finally lands in Houston, makes his way up to Oklahoma. He's picking cotton. He's like, this is not a life for me. And he's like, where are there jobs? And someone said, oh, there's jobs in Oklahoma. He's like, where's Oklahoma? Or excuse me, jobs in Chicago. He's like, where's Chicago? They go north. So he just walked north until he made it to Chicago. And he spent the next, I don't think he moved to California since until he was in his 80s. So he spent the next 65 years there in Chicago. And yeah, came across Al Capone.
I love that he stood up to him. I
Me
love
too.
that.
Me too. And if you knew him, that would not surprise you.
He was also a very tall man compared to Al Capone.
Come
So
forward every once in a while. Does he
Sorry?
still come forward?
does he still come forward, Tuvi? Do you still get granddaddy?
You know, he has taken a little bit of a step back. Mostly who I interact with on the other side that's like related or close to me. I've got my mentor, Kevin Allen, who taught me kind of how to psychic. He passed away, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. I miss him dearly. But he's constantly in my head, and my grandmother is always all over me. So my grandfather's wife, amazing woman. She comes in all the time. Every once in a while, like my grandfather, this is an actual true story. So it was Memorial Day weekend. Early in the morning, I was out for a run. This was in Texas. Talk about things that can kill you. I was out in Texas on a trail that was paved, that was right next to like a guardrail. And I saw a guy out of the corner of my eye. He was behind the wheel of a car, and he absolutely shouldn't have been. This guy was just blasted, and he was driving fairly fast. And all of a sudden, the car started to drift because he started to nod off toward me. So I am next to this guardrail. I have nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. And I'm like, okay, I'm just dead, right? And all of a sudden, I see his shoulder being jerked forward, and he snaps up and he straightens the wheel out. And it, like, I stopped. I was just, and he gets pulled over down the street by a cop. I'm like, a little too late, dude. But anyway, in my head, I felt my grandfather go, that was close. So I know my grandfather intervened. I know he did, because I watched it. Like I watched it. This guy's shoulder was pulled forward. It wasn't that he jerked forward. It was pulled forward. So that was my granddaddy. Thank God. So yeah, he's kind of still an amazing guy.
So that's my list of questions. Does anybody want to say anything else before we end our first fan PEM podcast? Is that a big fat no?
I would just like to say, Sandy, I think you do a great job at writing up all of these mysteries.
Thank you.
She really
Thank you
does.
very much.
She works her ass off, you guys. Like I tend to get a lot of love, which I love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But truly the star of this show is my sister. Truly, she is incredible. She doesn't usually ask me for help because she knows she won't get it because I'm busy.
When she was reading the credits for Rachel Lee, it just went on and on and on and on. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, she went really deep dive to find
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. She's like a badger for research.
She's amazing. She is
All right.
amazing.
This
Love
is
it.
not what the podcast is about, but thank
Yes,
you.
it is.
for the
Shut
compliment.
it and
Appreciate
just
it.
take the compliment.
Okay. Anybody else have anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Awesome. You guys were wonderful. Thank you for being our fans, for coming on, for sharing your thoughts and memories and experiences. We really, really appreciate that.
And suggestions.
And your suggestions. Yes. And Happy New Year, everybody. We love you.
Happy
Take care.
birthday.
Okay.
Happy birthday,
Happy
V.
birthday,
Thank
Happy
you.
New
Okay.
Year.